I guess it was 2006, the years all, when you're working on something in a way that's as pleasant as this because of the hope that it brings, because it's kind of dismal when you stop to think that we have to work on this. And I read with just, I can't say interest, I don't know what the word would be, but just shock and shame that the 38108 zip code, that this was actually happening right here in a city where we felt that we were making strides and bringing new jobs and building new buildings and things. But right here, just in our midst, the most helpless of all remained the most helpless, and there was no relief in sight. And I said, how can this be? And I don't know what it was, because right about the same time, at the state level, Governor Bredesen was getting mobilized in his office to make an attack on infant mortality statewide. And of course, it just riveted the attention of the entire state on Memphis once that story appeared. I talked with him. His concept was that although he had tons of things to do in the state, that if we were going to meet any success in this, that it had to come from the top. So when we talked, I said, Governor, what I want to do, regardless of whatever structure's in place now, if this is going to work in Memphis and Shelby County, it's got to come through the mayor's office. In other words, I cannot have any structure standing between me and this little baby out here who needs help. I can't have anybody saying, oh no, that has to go through there, that has to go there. I needed to be able to call the shot, so to speak, and say, you go over there, you put that money there, we're going to do it this way. That's the only way we're going to get started. This was something that you could not have, oh, let's have a 2-year planning period, and then in the 3rd year we'll get started on this, and let's restructure this and do this. This was something, we have a crisis, and I don't like using that word because sometimes it paralyzes us, but we have a crisis now. We need a call to action. We need to get moving right now. It just, to me, it was so paradoxical that when we have St. Jude here, when Labana's here, all of these things dedicated to taking care of our most precious, that we can't let this happen. And then each time I go over to the hospital at St. Jude's, and I see that etching on the portico there that reads, "No child should die in the dawn of life," and all of that just kept coming back. And I kept asking myself, is that merely going to be something etched in stone, or is it going to become a calling? Is it going to become a cause? Is it going to become a crusade? Is it going to become something that we live by? I chose the latter. It's nice to have it etched in stone, but more importantly, it's better to say, God, we've got an army out here mobilized, and that's how I did. The governor graciously came down and brought the highest level of attention we could bring to this issue with the summit that was held at the University of Memphis. Not just a talk, but breaking into groups and say, get out there and go to work. This is a one-day summit. Get out there, go to work. Everybody did just that. And it brought me more joy just getting that process started. And now we're beginning to see the fruits of that. One thing, I've sat here and I've talked about well, let me just get down to what I and other elected officials have to do. We've got to make sure that we align our governmental structures so that there's no division whatsoever. Nothing can fall through the cracks. Not one baby, not one grant opportunity, not one research opportunity. This is one thing. We can debate forever on where the governments ought to be consolidated and all that. Let the politicians deal with that. But when it comes to this meaning the cause of infant mortality, our governmental structures have to be aligned. We can do that. We will do that. I tell you, one of the first things that Mayor Lupton and I took up in our first meeting was how can we pull our efforts toward combating infant mortality. Those have to be together. no turfing. This is a countywide issue. Neither one of we want it done, and we want our legislative bodies to do the same. We're going to do that. We're going to have a city and county in which, if you want to join this crusade, you won't need to come to two buildings and go to this and that. There'll be one place. Anybody who wants to join this crusade, we've got to be singular when it comes to voice and comes to mission on this, because again, you see, children of school age, and as I pointed out recently in an op-ed piece, nothing really focuses in on these children from a governmental view until they're 6 or 8 years old. And anybody will tell you, you don't have to be an expert way, way, way too late in many instances. So what I hope to see and will see is this city and county will be a model. My vision, we will have a model entity, model structure in which there are no seams, there are no cracks, there is no overlap. It's going to be seamless. We have to be that way. And if you wanted to be graphic in the detail, you see, you know, babies, how they can get through the slightest little crack in a crib sometimes. You know, that's why you have to be so careful where we put them to sleep, because they'll just find little ways to slip through the cracks. Well, when it comes to our focus on this, just imagine, if you will, visually, how easy it is for a healthy baby to slip through a little crack somewhere. Imagine, if you will, just how easy it is for the unseen out there in the dark places of our community. So it behooves, it is an imperative that we in government have our dragnet so finely woven, if you will, that when we make this sweep, no baby is left behind. It would be an indictment against us as governmental officials if we don't make sure that we work together with, just like this, on that, and we're going to do that. It's going to be difficult working together. Imagine how difficult it would be if we're not just amazingly coordinated, and that's what we're going to do. You know, it's amazing that in other aspects of the continuum of life, we do have those seamless protections built in. And in this connection, I draw on my expense as a criminal defense lawyer, chief public defender, in which we were called upon to represent individuals who were facing the death penalty. And when it came to that, we spared no measure to see that the individual's right to continue living and to not be deprived of that life without the full array of legal protections. You need an expert, we write the check. You need a ballistics expert, we write the check. You need to travel, we write the check. You need an expert on fingerprints, we write the check. You need DNA, we write the check. Never came a point in which you said, oh, stop, we're running out of money, we're tired of this. That's in the dusk of life for people who have seen the beauty that this great society has to offer. No limits spared. It just seemed to me so ironic then that when it came to the very dawning of life, that we were stingy, that we had limits, that you had to live in a certain place, you had to be in a certain age bracket, you had to have a certain, beyond a certain income. People were falling through the cracks. Little babies, no less, were falling through the cracks of our great society in the very dawn of life, while along that continuum at the other end, in the dusk of life, those who've enjoyed life, those who've had the first birthday, that we spare no measure. There is no end in our quest to make sure that they're protected. Is it asking too much to say to a baby that we're going to be just as exhaustive, just as intense, just as dedicated to ensuring one thing for you, little baby? You're not asking for much. You're not asking to live in the greatest of mansions, to ride home in the most luxurious of cars, have the prettiest baby bed. Little baby, the only thing you're asking, and we're going to give this to you. We're going to let you see that first birthday. Is that asking too much? I don't think it is. And I guess maybe that's something that dogs me because of my eclectic background, in which I find myself having at one phase of my life being dedicated to looking out for those who were in the dusk of their lives and just fighting with dog determination to keep them among the living, that I now find myself fighting with the same dogged determination and ferociousness to extend that same protection to our most precious in the dawn of life. You know, again, let me draw on my background. Many of the horrible cases that I handled in the criminal courts, when I researched the background of the defendants and went all the way back to conception, and I mean just what I said, because the experiences of the mother during pregnancy, and the studies now bear this out. When I was doing it, it was mainly anecdotal, case by case, but there's now research that is creditable that bears this out, that with the mother being subjected to stress and violence, there is a greater likelihood that that's going to be reflected in that baby's conduct and demeanor and deportment in his or her life. The reason I mention that is that if the hardest of hearts somehow can look at what we're trying to do and the message we're trying to get across and say, well, hey, I'm 70 years old, I'm not having any more babies, and I don't live down there in that part of town anyway, so I'm going to change channels, I'm going somewhere else. This is, let those young moms and those others do. No, 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 no. Because the baby in the womb today who's not getting the right diet, whose mom is under stress, that same baby, 16, 17 years, is coming to a neighborhood near you, and they will not come with a smile on their face. So there is no way to separate one neighborhood from this, one race from this, one age group. This is everybody's cause. This should be everybody's concern, because this is much more than one woman having one baby. This impacts us all. And the tragic thing about it is that in that most vulnerable period in life, we here in Memphis and Shelby County have not yet erected the structures that we need to see that those who can speak least for themselves are heard the loudest. And that's what it ought to be. A baby crying ought to be a healthy sound. A baby should not cry for want and misery. But even worse is to cry and not be heard. And tragically, that is what is happening. These babies are crying and they're not being heard, and they're not asking for much. Now, it's amazing that once you are 6 years of age, that we have elected school boards. People run for those boards and they spell out how they're going to look out for those children 6 and up in the school system. And then if you fortunately get through school and high school and you get into the University of Memphis, we've got the Board of Regents, and people are appointed by the governor, no less, and they take an oath to look out for these 18-year-olds We're going to look out for them, make sure there's no price gouging, that they got good dorms to live in, good food in those dorms, that they have exercise, that we've got security forces on their campus. If you go to UT, then the Board of Trustees is going to take care of you. But if you're 8 months old and things aren't going right, where's that board that meets on Monday night or quarterly or whatever and asks for a status report on a condition report on the 1 month old and the 6 week old and the 9 months old? Where is that? Where is that? Again, among the most vulnerable. I don't feel good being the mayor of a large city, and when you pull my organizational chart today and say, Mayor Wharton, show me where are you looking out for the? Well, it's we got a good police department, and if we hear of child abuse, no, Mayor Wharton. Where is it that someone is focusing on that? Who's that's the kind of answer I would have to give. I don't feel good about that. We can build tall buildings and parks and all that kind of stuff, but if we don't protect the most vulnerable, all that goes for naught. Well, I was always taught in Sunday school that fear is the beginning of learning. Well, not that we've been frightened. I think we've been shocked into an awareness, and people are listening now. Nobody is taking the view, or most folks are not taking the view, that this is something for somebody else to deal with. I'm not of childbearing age, so that's not my cause. You'll see the message now getting across. It's bipartisan. It's crossing all age and race. Nobody's saying, oh, that's a black problem over there, because the studies don't bear that out, as Governor Bredesen has so aptly pointed out. Once you rule out the things that we usually try to use as excuses, oh, well, that's a black thing, or it's a low income or whatever. We now know this, and there are people who are taking note of this and saying, wait a minute, I didn't know that. I've heard that so many times. And so we've now been shocked into an awareness. We now know that we have to be methodical, that it's going to take more than just being compassionate. And we've got to be strategic. We have to be empirical. This is why the infant mortality review team is so critical. Sure, it is nice to be loving and caring, but in the end, we've got to have some people in the back rooms distilling the information, collecting the information, looking for patterns, looking for differences. That's what it's going to take. And I'm hopeful that even during an election cycle, I am hopeful, and I've talked with gubernatorial candidates, all parties. I've not heard anybody say, nah, that's not going to be a priority. I am hopeful that the awareness level, people are acutely aware now of the scope of the challenge we face, but more importantly is we are now beginning to see that yes, we can do something about it. We can control diet. We can lessen stress, all of these things. So I am hopeful, just over the course of 4 short years, that this increased awareness level, and also if you look at the broad band of folks who are getting involved, it's huge black churches on one side of town. It's smaller churches in Douglas. It's white congregations who are adopting these programs and carrying the messages and placing inserts in their programs. everything. It's a newspaper that constantly runs op-ed pieces on this challenge that we face. So I have seen it just coming from almost on a speedometer, if you will, from zero. We're not at 120 miles an hour yet in turn, but we're at 60, and we're heading in the right direction. So there's so much hope, and even in these recessionary times, people are still saying we're going to give grant money for this. Even as stressed as we are in the city of Memphis, I am going to find a way to support this effort financially. We've invested too much in it now. We're beginning to make progress. It would be just totally inexcusable and unacceptable to pull back now. We're not going to do that. So I know that I have resolve. I know that Mayor Luttrell has that resolve. But more importantly, I know that tens of thousands of people in this great community have the same resolve. When I went out to Hickory Hill, World Overcomers last year, and I just looked at all the people who were out marching, not to picket, not to demonstrate, but to march and to say that all babies count. Every baby deserves a first birthday. When I look up and out of the blue, and Spike Lee and his wife say, "Hey, we're coming to Memphis to help get the word out." So awareness is the beginning. Awareness, and then grasping the fact that no, this is not one of those things in which we can truthfully say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, and it's bigger than all of us. There is something that can be done. We are doing it. We've got to do so much more of it. I am hopeful. I want to end it with a smile, because I am hopeful. Not time to celebrate yet, but it's on the verge of just being ready to celebrate, because we have an awareness like we've never had before. We have a willingness on the part of a diverse group of folks all across this neighborhood. We're going to get the business community involved. Everybody is saying, not, oh, just leave it alone. They're asking and saying, where do I fit in? What can I do? And that is great cause to be hopeful.